One video. Nearly 500,000 views. Every single viewer potentially infected with malware. I'm looking at TikTok engagement metrics that should make your blood run cold. Over 20,000 likes, more than 100 comments, people thanking the creator, asking for more tutorials. They had no idea they were downloading malware. The videos looked legitimate. Software tutorials promising free access to Windows, Office, CapCut, Spotify. But each download was delivering infostealer malware. Cyber criminals have figured out how to weaponize social media platforms at scale. We'll get to the TikTok attacks soon enough, but just remember this. Hackers are using the same spaces where you discover new music, learn cooking tips, and watch funny videos to distribute some of the most sophisticated malware I've ever analyzed. You're about to see how they did it. You'll be thanking me after this video. Before we proceed, you need to know this didn't start on TikTok. 3 years ago, Python developers around the world were installing what they thought were legitimate packages. Standard practice, right? You need a library. You pull it from PyPI, the official Python package index. The place developers trust. November 2022. Hundreds of developers unknowingly installed malware. The package was called Bumblebee. Looked completely normal. The kind of utility package you'd install without thinking twice. The malware wasn't hiding in the code. It was hiding inside innocent-looking PNG images. Steganography. The practice of concealing secret information within ordinary files. The setup.py script would download these image files and extract base 64 encoded malicious code from within the pixels themselves. You could stare at these images all day. They looked like normal graphics. But buried in the data was malware designed to steal everything on your system. The attack worked perfectly. Then we found the Discord server. Username, alpha.hash 0001, selling something called Wasp Stealer malware. The price? $20. $20. This is fully undetectable, he bragged to potential buyers. And he had proof. Screenshots of successful infections, data from compromised machines, a trophy room showcasing hundreds of victims who never saw it coming. The malware was polymorphic. It changed with each installation to evade detection. No two infections look the same to antivirus software. For $20, anyone could compromise the most trusted development infrastructure on the planet. But you know, $20 Discord sales were just the beginning. Ten months later, the criminals discovered something way bigger than those cheap malware sales. Celebrity faces, crypto greed, social media trust. September 2023, TikTok users started seeing videos of Elon Musk announcing exclusive cryptocurrency giveaways, Tesla partnerships, SpaceX investment opportunities. The videos looked real. Musk's voice, his mannerisms, even the lighting matched his typical interviews. But, honestly, it was clearly deep fake technology. AI-generated synthetic media that creates convincing fake videos of real people. The financial devastation was staggering. About $80 million lost to these scams since October 2020. Here's how they did it. Victims saw the fake Musk endorsements and got directed to professional-looking websites. The psychological hook was brilliant. To activate your account and claim your free cryptocurrency, you had to deposit 0.005 Bitcoin first, about $132 at the time. Small enough to seem reasonable. Large enough to steal millions when multiplied across thousands of victims. The criminals weren't posting one video and hoping for the best. They were flooding TikTok with fake endorsements, hourly. New videos constantly appearing faster than the platform could remove them. And they weren't just stealing money. They were collecting KYC data. Know your customer information. Driver's licenses, passports, social security numbers, everything needed for identity theft and account takeovers. The FTC issued warnings. The Better Business Bureau sent alerts. But the scams kept coming. But even this was just practice for what came next. The criminals had learned something valuable from those deep fake crypto scams. Social engineering worked better than technical sophistication, but they needed to test something new, something that could work at even bigger scale. April 2025. While security researchers were still tracking the TikTok crypto scams, the criminals were quietly experimenting with a completely different approach. They targeted iClicker, the classroom response system. used by thousands of universities, 5,000 instructors, 7 million students at schools like University of Michigan and University of Florida. But this wasn't a traditional website hack. Why, you might ask? Well, they were testing something called click-fix attacks. Instead of hiding malware in fake software downloads, they created fake error messages, fake CAPTCHA prompts that looked completely legitimate. When users encountered these prompts, they got instructions to fix the technical issue by copying and pasting a simple command. The command looked like this, showing you on the screen here. You guessed it. This command actually executes malware on their own machines. The click-fix methodology is just social engineering attacks that bypass every security measure by making the victim willingly run the malicious code themselves. The results were devastating. Full device access. Everything stolen. Here's what made it brilliant. No suspicious downloads. No email attachments. No obvious red flags. Just helpful instructions to fix a computer problem. But here's the cover-up that should make you angry. May 6th. 2025. 3 weeks after the breach ended, iClicker finally issued a security bulletin. They marked it with a no index tag, told search engines not to index the page. Limited visibility, harder to find. 7 million students potentially affected, and they tried to hide it. But the criminals weren't trying to hide. Now they just needed the right platform to scale it. They already knew TikTok's algorithm would promote engaging content to hundreds of thousands of viewers. They'd proven that with the crypto scams. Time to combine everything they'd learned. May 2025, the moment you've been waiting for. Criminals started posting AI-generated content that was virtually indistinguishable from human-created videos. Software tutorials on TikTok. The voices sounded human, but they weren't. The instructional voice appears AI-generated. Synthetic speech that could be mass-produced with perfect consistency. Then we found the infrastructure. VDR malware using Steam profiles as dead drop resolvers. Legitimate gaming platform profiles like these ones hosting malware command and control information. Steal C malware, connecting to Telegram channels like this one. For the same purpose. Dead drop resolvers. Using legitimate platforms like Steam and Telegram to host malware infrastructure. That makes detection and takedown extremely difficult. You're dealing with gaming profiles and messaging channels that look completely normal. But here's the truly terrifying thing I didn't mention yet. We discovered that state-sponsored groups APT28 and Kimsuki were using identical click-fix tactics. The same fake CAPTCHA prompts, the same PowerShell commands, the same social engineering methods. The $20 malware seller from Discord had evolved into something that looked exactly like advanced persistent threat groups backed by foreign governments, and it was happening on the platform where people go to watch dance videos. Now, I'll show you exactly what happened when someone fell for those AI-generated TikTok tutorials. The instructions tell you to copy and paste this command. Looks harmless. You paste it into PowerShell. You press enter. First, the command reaches out to this website here and downloads a script. That script immediately gets to work on your system. It creates hidden directories in your app data and local app data folders, places you'd never think to look. Then it does something clever. It adds these directories to your Windows Defender exclusion list. Your own antivirus software is now programmed to ignore what's happening in these folders. Next, it downloads the real payload from here. This is the infostealer malware. It launches as a hidden process with elevated privileges. You can't see it running. Task Manager won't show you anything suspicious. Now the data theft begins. Credentials from every browser you've ever used. Cryptocurrency wallets. Credit card information stored in autofill. Discord accounts. Passwords. Every piece of sensitive data on your system gets collected and packaged. The malware sends everything to hard-coded webhooks. Your whole online life gets uploaded to servers controlled by criminals. But it's not done yet. The malware fetches another script from here. This handles persistence and cleanup. It modifies your registry. Specifically, it adds entries to this registry key I'm showing you here. This means the malware will restart every time you boot your computer. It's not going anywhere. Finally, the cleanup phase. It deletes temporary folders, removes traces of the initial infection, covers its tracks. By the time it's finished, your system looks normal, runs normal, but everything valuable has been stolen. and the malware is permanently embedded in your operating system. This entire process takes minutes. Most victims never know it happened until they've been drained. So here we are. $20 Discord sales have evolved into AI-powered campaigns reaching 500,000 people. State-sponsored tactics are now available to any criminal with an internet connection. Your entertainment platforms have become weapons of mass deception. This is social engineering that makes victims install malware themselves. You're an IT administrator. You manage VMware infrastructure. You need to know what's running in your environment. There's a tool for that. REvil tools. Since 2008, over 2 million people have downloaded this thing. It's not flashy. It's not complicated. It just works. REvil tools does one job really well. It connects to your VMware vCenter. It pulls inventory data, configuration details, health reports, everything you need to manage your virtual infrastructure. The kind of tool you install once and forget about, until you need it. Here's what makes REvil tools valuable. It's free, it's reliable, and it saves you hours of manual work clicking through vCenter consoles. When you download enterprise software, you're making a decision. You're trusting that the developers care about security. You're trusting them. Supply chain attacks work because of this trust. Cybercriminals compromise the tools you already trust. The software you've used for years. They turn your solutions into their weapons. Before we get into REvil tools, I need to take you back to 3 years ago. This was when the Conti ransomware syndicate had a problem. Their primary malware loader, Bazaar Loader, was getting burned. Security tools were catching it. Researchers were dissecting it. Law enforcement was tracking it. They needed something new. Something better. Something that could target the enterprise tools that IT professionals trust every day. On April 28, 2022, they released Bumblebee. This wasn't just another piece of malware. This was a sophisticated loader designed to do one thing perfectly: get other malware onto enterprise systems without being detected. Bumblebee had multiple attack vectors. Phishing emails carrying ISO file attachments, malicious advertising campaigns, SEO poisoning that made fake sites appear in search results. They used something called Prometheus TDS, a traffic distribution system that routes victims to the right payload based on their system configuration. But here's what made Bumblebee dangerous for enterprise environments. It wasn't the final attack. It was the gateway. Once Bumblebee got onto a system, it could deploy anything. Cobalt, Strike, beacons for remote access, Sliver frameworks for persistence, Meter-Preter for post-exploitation activities, and eventually ransomware. The attackers had built the perfect weapon for supply chain compromises. They just needed the right target. Something trusted. Something widely used. Something that enterprise administrators would install without question. Something like REvil tools. May 12th, 2025. Monday morning. Aidan Leon from Zero Day Labs was doing what security researchers do. Checking software downloads, looking for anomalies, following hunches. He downloaded the latest REvil tools installer. Something was wrong. The file size was off. Way off. The legitimate REvil tools installer should be around 10 megabytes. This one was significantly larger. Leon dug deeper. Inside the installer, he found something that shouldn't be there. A file called version.dll. This wasn't part of the normal REvil tools package. He uploaded the installer to VirusTotal. Multiple antivirus engines flagged it as malicious. The legitimate version, clean. But here's where it gets interesting. Leon tried to verify his findings. He went back to the official REvil tools website to download another copy. Tuesday afternoon, the website went down. Just gone. Hours later, it came back online. Leon grabbed the new installer. This time it was clean. The right file size. No malicious DLL. No virus total detections. Then the website went down again. Leon later described what happened. I noticed it firsthand on Monday. Tuesday afternoon, the website went down, came back online, and the malicious file was replaced with a safe one. Someone was playing cleanup. Fast. But why would the official REvil site be serving malware? And why the frantic damage control? And what was the version.dll file designed to do? Within days, the cybersecurity community was buzzing about Leon's discovery. But then something unexpected happened. Dell pushed back. Hard. According to Dell, the official REvil sites, robware.net and revtools.com, were never compromised. Never. They claimed that all the malicious installers were coming from fake domains, typo squatting sites designed to trick users. Two completely different stories. Dell saying their infrastructure was never touched. Researchers saying they saw it happen in real time. Meanwhile, other researchers started finding additional attack vectors. Typo-squatted domains that changed revtools.com to revtools.org. These were definitely serving malware. The timeline got messy fast. Some reports put the initial compromise around May 19th to 20th. Others insisted it happened earlier. The official sites remained offline for extended periods, making verification nearly impossible. Dell's position was clear. Any compromised installers came from fake sites designed to fool users. Period. Dell and the researchers stood head to head. So who was right, Dell or the researchers? The answer would determine whether this was a supply chain attack on trusted infrastructure or just another type of squatting campaign. The difference mattered. A lot. So, what was in the version.dll file that was so awful? The malicious version.dll file was designed specifically for this attack. You see, when REvtools was installed, it would look for its legitimate version.dll file. But instead of finding the real one, it would load the malicious one. This is DLL sideloading. But let's go deeper. The malware could detect if it was running inside VMware or VirtualBox environments. If it detected analysis tools, it would behave differently. Act innocent. Not only that, but the code included techniques from something called Alcazar, a proof-of-concept tool designed to evade security analysis. When the malicious version.dll executed, it wasn't just installing some generic malware. It was installing Bumblebee, the same sophisticated loader that the Conti Syndicate had built 3 years earlier that I told you about at the start of this story. The same loader that could deploy Cobalt Strike beacons. The same loader that could install ransomware. The same loader that had been targeting enterprise networks for years. The SHA-256 hash of the malicious installer was different from the legitimate one. The evidence was there. But most people don't check file hashes. Most people just assume that if they download software from what looks like the official website, it's safe. The controversy about whether the official sites were compromised. That almost didn't matter. Because regardless of the source, the attack worked. The malware was distributed, and Bumblebee was now running on systems that managed critical VMware infrastructure across enterprise networks. It was perfectly executed. Now here's what makes this story even more remarkable. Bumblebee wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Remember when I told you about Conti's shutdown on May 19th, 2022? Most ransomware groups disappear when law enforcement applies pressure. Their infrastructure gets dismantled, their operators scatter, their malware gets abandoned. Not Bumblebee. The malware survived its creators, even thrived without them. Then came Operation Endgame in May 2024. This was a massive international law enforcement operation. Servers seized, domains taken down, arrests made. The operation targeted the entire ecosystem of malware as a service platforms. Bumblebee should have been finished. Should have put its name and face on a t-shirt. But by October 21st, 2024, it was back. Not just back, it was bigger and stronger than ever. The new version had enhanced techniques that showed someone was still actively developing this thing. Phishing emails that carried zip archives, malicious .lnk files that executed payloads, .ms files that used something called self-reg table deployment to install without triggering security alerts. The command and control communications had been upgraded too. RC4 encryption with hard-coded keys. Every request encrypted before transmission. Every response decrypted on the victim's machine. This wasn't some abandoned code running on autopilot. This was active, ongoing development. Security researchers started analyzing the new version. What they found was fascinating. Code similarities to TrickBot. Not just similar. Identical in some places. This suggested either the same developer was working on both projects, or someone had access to TrickBot's source code and was borrowing techniques. When Conti shut down, their developers didn't just disappear. They scattered across the cybercrime ecosystem. Some joined Hello Kitty. Others went to Avos Locker. Some started their own operations. The skills didn't vanish. The knowledge didn't disappear. It just spread. Bumblebee's survival was proof that modern malware operates like open-source software. When one group gets shut down, the code lives on, gets improved, gets distributed to new operators, and it was still out there. Today, the controversy between Dell and the security researchers remains unresolved. Dell maintains their official infrastructure was never compromised. The researchers stand by their evidence. But while that debate continues, the attacks didn't stop. Days before Leon's discovery on May 8, 2025, researchers found something else. Google ads promoting fake RV tools sites. These weren't just serving Bumblebee anymore. This was a different attack chain entirely. The fake RV tool sites were deploying something called Smoked Ham, a PowerShell.NET backdoor. But Smoked Ham wasn't the endgame. It was installing Crocodilus. Crocodilus is employee monitoring software. Legitimate businesses use it to track productivity. But in the wrong hands, it becomes something much more dangerous. The attack chain looked something like this. Pay attention, otherwise you'll miss it. Trojanized installer leads to Smoked Ham deployment, which installs Crocodilus, which harvests credentials, which enables VMware ESX encryption using PowerCLI and WinSCP. Crocodilus captures keystrokes and web pages from an administrator's workstations. So, where does this leave us? The controversy between Dell and the researchers. That might never be fully resolved. The forensic evidence was cleaned up too quickly. The timelines are too confused. The witnesses too few. The question isn't whether it will happen again. The question is whether you'll check the file hash before you install it. Wink, wink. June 23rd, 2025. 4 men walk out of a Russian courthouse as free men. You wouldn't look twice at them on the street. But these 4 once commanded millions in ransom payments. They owned fleets of luxury BMWs and Mercedes. They brought Fortune 500 companies to their knees. I'm talking about members of REvil, one of the most destructive ransomware groups in history. In a single year, they extracted over $100 million from victims worldwide. They were sentenced to 5 years in prison, but they only served 3.5. How did these cyber criminals get early release? These 4 men, Andrei Besanov, Mikhail Golovachuk, Roman Muromsky, and Dmitry Korotayev walked free. The Russian Federal Security Service claimed their organized criminal community ceased to exist, that the information infrastructure used for criminal purposes was neutralized. But here's the thing about infrastructure. It can be rebuilt. And now, these men are free. April 2019. A new ransomware group emerges from the depths of internet hell. They called themselves REvil, also known as Sodinokibi. REvil operated like a legitimate business. They pioneered something called ransomware as a service. REvil built the ransomware tools, the encryption software, the payment portals, the infrastructure. Then they rented it all out to affiliates around the world. Think of it as criminal franchising. The affiliates did the breaking and entering, found the vulnerabilities, deployed the ransomware. Then REvil took a percentage of every ransom payment. It's like McDonald's franchising, but the cybercrime version. May 2020, they targeted a high-profile law firm, Grubman, Shire, Miselius & Sachs. This wasn't random. The firm represented A-list celebrities, major entertainment companies. REvil stole 1 terabyte of data, documents, contracts, even emails related to Donald Trump's legal matters. They requested a $42 million ransom demand. The law firm refused to pay. So REvil started their public humiliation campaign. Documents appeared on Happy Blog. Sensitive client information leaked bit by bit. The message was clear: pay up or watch your reputation burn. One thing I forgot to mention is that REvil's malware checked the keyboard language on whatever computer it infected. If it detected Russian, Ukrainian, or Belarusian keyboards, it wouldn't activate. This wasn't an accident. It was insurance. As long as they didn't target Russian-speaking countries, they figured Moscow would leave them alone. By early 2021, REvil was getting bolder. The attacks were escalating, and they were starting to affect your daily life. March 2021, Harris Federation in the UK. 37,000 students couldn't access their school systems. Classes canceled. Education ground to a halt. Then Acer, the computer manufacturer, got hit with a $50 million demand. When they didn't pay fast enough, REvil doubled down. $100 million by the March 28th deadline. But the attack that changed everything happened in May 2021. JBS, the world's largest meat supplier. REvil's ransomware tore through their systems like wildfire. Processing plants shut down across multiple countries. The global meat supply chain collapsed overnight. You probably remember what happened because the news was everywhere and the fallout was too. Empty shelves in grocery stores, refrigerated cases sitting bare. People were scrambling for whatever protein they could find. That was all because of REvil. JBS paid $11 million in Bitcoin, but the damage was done. Behind the scenes, REvil's attack was, honestly, pretty impressive. They used DLL sideloading to bypass security software, PowerShell scripts to maintain access to compromised systems, and registry manipulation to disable Windows Defender. They knew exactly what and when to do it. And REvil was just getting started. April 2021. REvil hit Quanta Computer in Taiwan. The thing is, Quanta makes components for Apple. REvil stole blueprints for unreleased Apple products, detailed schematics, design specifications, trade secrets worth billions. They put out a $50 million ransom demand. By now, international pressure was mounting. Critical infrastructure was under constant assault. The global economy was bleeding money. Then the president at the time, Biden, picked up the phone, called Vladimir Putin directly. The message was simple: control your cyber criminals, or we will. What happened next almost never happens between America and Russia. Some cooperation. The FSB later confirmed they conducted raids at the request of competent U.S. authorities. U.S. and international authorities had breached REvil's command and control servers. They were tracking the group's every move, mapping their domains and IP addresses and building strong cases. Then July 13th, 2021, REvil vanished. Their servers went dark. Happy Blog disappeared. No new attacks, no ransom demands, no communication, just silence. Then, REvil tried to make a comeback. September 7th, 2021. Happy Blog and their payment portals reappeared on the dark web. The infrastructure was back online, but no new attacks materialized. Something had broken their momentum. something big enough to make them disappear in the first place. You want to know why they vanished? Well, just 11 days before REvil vanished, they aimed too big. Kaseya, a software company you've probably never heard of. They make IT management tools that help businesses manage their computer networks remotely. REvil found a zero-day vulnerability in Kaseya's software, CVE 2021-3116. A zero-day means the software vendor doesn't know the vulnerability exists. No patch, no protection, no warning. What made this attack so terrifying was Kaseya's software was used by managed service providers, or better known as MSPs. MSPs handle IT for hundreds of other businesses. When REvil compromised Kaseya, they didn't just hit one company. They hit everyone downstream. 1,500 businesses got infected, but the real impact was in Sweden. 800 Coop grocery stores forced to shut down, completely closed. REvil demanded $70 million, their biggest ransom ever. They offered a universal decryption key for all victims, one payment to unlock 1,500 companies. This attack crossed a line. It was too big, too visible, too damaging. 11 days later, REvil went dark. Now you know why. Remember I said that REvil tried to make a comeback? Well, that didn't happen because the arrests started. November 2021, U.S. authorities arrested Yaroslav Vasinski in Ukraine, the man behind the Kaseya attack. He'd later get 13 years in prison, with $16 million in restitution. Then, months later, on January 14, 2022, dawn raids across Russia. FSB agents kicked down doors in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Leningrad, and Lipetsk regions. 14 arrests. The coordination was flawless. And the seizures? 426 million rubles, $600,000 cash, 500,000 euros, cryptocurrency wallets, computers, 20 luxury cars. Andrei Besanov alone had two 2020 BMWs and $497,000 seized from his home. Roman Korotaev's 2019 Mercedes-Benz, gone. Russian media called them one of the world's most prominent cybercrime groups, finally getting what they deserved. 8 men were charged. They faced up to 7 years in prison. Then came the sentencing. October 2024. Alexander Zayats got 4.5 years. Pavel Malozemov got 5 years. Ruslan Konzverov got 5.5 years. Artem Puzarevsky, identified as the group leader, got 6 years. Wait, let me say that again. The leader of one of history's most destructive ransomware groups got 6 years. Remember what these men did. They shut down meat processing plants, paralyzed grocery stores, disrupted global supply chains, stole hundreds of millions of dollars. 6 years. Maximum. Something didn't feel right about those sentences. They seemed light, too light for the damage caused. But at the time, justice felt served. The criminals were behind bars, the assets were seized, the group was dismantled. What could go wrong? So here we are, June 23rd, 2025. Andrei Besanov, Mikhail Golovachuk, Roman Muromsky, Dmitry Korotayev. 4 men walk out of the Dzerzhinsky court in St. Petersburg as free men. But wait, the math doesn't add up. They were sentenced to 5 years in prison. They were arrested in January 2022. That's only 3.5 years ago. How did they get early release? April 2022. 2 months after those dawn raids, Russia invaded Ukraine. And with that invasion, everything changed. The US and Russian authorities stopped caring about it and ceased comms. Russian authorities confirmed it themselves. US authorities stopped cooperating with the Russian investigation after the Special Military Operation. The Special Military Operation. That's what Russia calls the war in Ukraine. During their release, another 51.8 million rubles in assets were confiscated, additional vehicles and cash. But the men themselves? Free to go. The court changed their restraint to recognizance, not to leave. Limited movement restrictions. They can't travel internationally, but they can rebuild. And here's what should keep you awake tonight. REvil member Yevgeny Polyanin, a Russian national suspected in over 3,000 ransomware attacks, remains at large. Over $6 million was seized from him. But he's still out there. The knowledge, the connections, they all still exist. So what happens next? I'm not going to speculate. The facts speak for themselves. I just know this story isn't over. You, right there, who's watching this video. Stop for a second. Imagine you're a journalist. You've spent months digging into stories that powerful people don't want told. Your phone buzzes. You were targeted by state-sponsored attackers. That's exactly what happened to Ciro Pellegrino. Apple's notification system just told him someone with serious resources wanted inside his online life. But he wasn't alone. Francesco Cancelato was deep into investigating political exposés, the kind that end careers. His WhatsApp started throwing alerts. Something was wrong. Then there's the prominent European journalist. We don't know their name. We don't know their country. What we know is they got the same treatment. These weren't random targets. They weren't caught up in some broad surveillance sweep. Someone specifically wanted to know what they knew. What did these journalists discover that someone was willing to break into their phones to silence? Someone was systematically hunting journalists across Europe. The footprints were everywhere once you knew how to look. But who was doing the hunting? And how deep did this go? That's where this story gets interesting. October 2024. WhatsApp's security team is staring at their monitoring dashboards. Something's wrong. Not the usual wrong. This is different. They're seeing patterns, anomalies, users getting added to WhatsApp groups they never joined, PDF files appearing in chats, then nothing. Radio silence. But here's what kept them awake at night. When they dug deeper, they found the first traces of this attack vector going back to March 17th, 2023. Nearly 2 years. 2 years of this vulnerability sitting there, being exploited by the elites. The attack was elegant in its simplicity. You get added to a WhatsApp group, a PDF appears. You don't even need to open it. You don't need to click anything. The PDF just exists in your chat and boom, your phone is compromised. Zero-click exploitation. Your device betrays you without your knowledge or consent. No human error required. The forensics team started finding breadcrumbs across infected devices. They called them big pretzel artifacts. Sounds almost cute, right? It wasn't. Then they found the iMessage account, Attacker1. This account was the entry point, the way in. The WhatsApp engineers were just now realizing someone was systematically hunting truth-tellers. June 4th, 2025. The parliamentary report drops like a bomb. Legal compliance confirmed, but potential for abuse. Read that again. Legal compliance confirmed. Everything they did was technically by the book. Every journalist's phone they cracked. Every private message they extracted. Every source they exposed. It was all apparently legal. The Graphite spyware license specifically restricted camera and microphone access. The lawmakers thought they were being careful. They thought they were putting a stop on government surveillance. But it didn't matter. That was the loophole. Messages were the real target. Your WhatsApp conversations, your Signal chats, your encrypted communications that you thought were private. The spyware couldn't watch you through your camera, but it could read every word you typed. Victims' information was stored in immutable databases, digital ledgers that can't be altered or deleted. Every target logged, every extraction recorded, every journalist's private life cataloged in permanent storage forever. Imagine knowing the government has your secret communications stored forever. February 6th, 2025. Paragon Solutions cuts and runs from their Italian contracts. Just like that. The spyware company that had been providing military-grade surveillance tools to hunt journalists suddenly decides the heat's too much. They terminate their agreements and walk away. 8 days later, February 14th, 2025, Italian intelligence suspends their operations. They didn't dismantle the infrastructure. They didn't delete the databases full of journalists' private messages. They didn't burn the capabilities they'd built over nearly a year of systematic surveillance. They just paused. Meanwhile, Apple and WhatsApp were scrambling to patch the vulnerabilities. Security updates were pushed out to billions of devices worldwide. The zero-click PDF exploit that had been lurking since March 2023 finally gets sealed. The command and control server that was behind these attacks came from the IP address shown here. It didn't go dark until April 12, 2025. That's, 2 months after the official suspension. Operations were supposedly stopped in February, but the digital infrastructure kept running until April. What was happening during those 2 months? What data was still being collected while everyone thought the program had ended? Guess we'll never know for sure. April 29th, 2025. That's when Ciro Pellegrino, Francesco Consolato, and that anonymous European journalist finally got their notifications. You were targeted by state-sponsored attackers, months after the fact. Months after their private communications had been cataloged in immutable databases. Months after their sources might have been exposed. The victims were literally the last to know they were popped. This is what victory looks like in the world of government surveillance. Paragon walks away clean. Italian intelligence keeps their tools and their data. And somewhere another server is probably spinning up to replace the one that finally went dark. Paragon Solutions remains fully approved for use in the United States. Right now, the US DEA is actively using Graphite spyware. The same tool that was hunting Italian journalists is being deployed by American law enforcement. Meanwhile, NSO Group's Pegasus spyware is banned in the US, blacklisted. Same capabilities, same zero-click exploitation, same message extraction. But one company gets the green light while the other gets sanctioned. The difference? Politics, not technology. Not ethics. Politics. Italy had constitutional ruling 170/2023 in place. It required judicial oversight for surveillance operations. It was supposed to prevent exactly what happened to Ciro Pellegrino and Francesco Consolato. But this isn't just an Italian story. It's not just a European problem. The spyware industry is global. It's legal, and it's largely unregulated. Paragon has clients on every continent. NSO Group, despite being banned in the US, operates worldwide. New companies are spinning up every month with new tools, new capabilities, new ways to turn your phone against you. While we were focused on this one operation, I want you to know that there are so many others running in parallel. And somewhere, in a server room you'll never see, your messages might already be stored in government server logs. That's the world we live in now. Sweet dreams.
Cyber attacks.
He was shocked to learn that cyber criminals.
The Operations Center in Brooklyn to combat cyber threats.
I want you to picture December 2024. Cybersecurity researchers are tracking another ransomware sample. Nothing unusual there. Happens every day, but this one was different. They called it Sphinx, and it was broken. Not broken like buggy code. Broken like incomplete. The ransom notes were there, but they were missing something crucial. No Tor sites. No unique victim IDs. Every mature ransomware operation needs two things to function. Anonymous communication channels so victims can contact them, and unique identification systems so they can track who paid what. Sphinx had neither. Trend Micro's analysts put it simply. This thing appeared to be in development. Someone was building something, testing it, refining it. Then came the real discovery. By the time researchers figured out what they were looking at, Sphinx had evolved. It wasn't Sphinx anymore. It was Anubis. And unlike every other ransomware they'd seen, this one wasn't just about encryption. It wasn't just about money. This was the birth of a horrifying, brutal piece of ransomware. And you're about to dive in head first, so don't go anywhere. 2 months later, February 23rd, 2025. The Ramp forum lights up with a new post. Someone calling themselves Supersonic is making an announcement. They're opening for business, not just any business, a ransomware business. Here's what they're offering their partners. 80% of ransomware profits go to the affiliate, 60% for data extortion, 50% for initial access brokers. You're looking at a criminal enterprise with a structured revenue model. Clean percentages, clear roles, professional operations. This is what we call ransomware as a service. The technical experts build the malware. The affiliates deploy it. Everyone gets paid. It's like franchising, but for cybercrime. Supersonic isn't working alone. They've got a partner, Anubis Media, same operation, spreading across multiple forums. Ramp, XSS. Wherever cybercriminals gather to do business, their target list is specific. United States, Europe, Canada, Australia. But they're excluding educational institutions and government sectors. Why? Maybe they don't want that kind of heat. Maybe they're trying to stay under the radar. Either way, they're not messing around, and they're actively recruiting. 2 days later, February 25th, 2025. The first victims surface. 4 organizations across the globe. Names you've probably never heard of, but that doesn't make it any less real. First, Defense Fire Protection in the United States. An engineering company. The kind of place that designs fire safety systems for buildings you work in every day. Angels of Summit. A healthcare facility in the US where people go when they need medical care. Where patient records live. S&E, Peru. Marketing company down in Peru. A business trying to make it in South America. And Pound Road Medical Center in Australia. Another healthcare facility. Another place where people trust their most sensitive information. United States. Peru. Australia. That's 3 continents. In 2 days. This is global coordination. The kind of reach that takes serious skill in a serious operation. The places these guys hit could be the places you trust with your information, your safety, your life. And they just proved they can reach them all, from anywhere in the world. Now researchers sat up and started digging into Anubis. They want to understand what they're really dealing with. And what they find will make you sick to your core. First, the encryption. Anubis uses elliptic curve integrated encryption scheme. That's military-grade stuff. The kind of encryption that you need a quantum computer for. Every file it touches gets the .Anubis extension, like their own evil signature. But here's where it gets interesting. The command line parameters I'm showing you here. One for authentication and one for privilege escalation. /key equals for authentication. / elevated for privilege escalation. You're looking at malware that authenticates its operators before it runs. Yes. That means that no ordinary person can steal it and start using it. And that /elevated parameter? That's Anubis trying to get system-level access on Windows machines. System level is the highest privilege you can get on a Windows computer, higher than administrator. With system access, you can do anything. Read any file. Delete any file. Install anything. Control everything. The code samples show interactive checking. It's not just blindly trying to escalate. It's testing, probing, making sure it gets the access it needs before it makes its move. But the evasion techniques are what really caught my eye. Anubis deliberately avoids certain directories. Windows, folder. System, 32. Program, files. Why? Because if you mess with those, the whole system crashes. And if the system crashes, you can't finish your job. This thing is designed to keep the computer running while it works. Smart enough to avoid breaking what it needs to complete its mission. And it's terminating specific processes. SQL Server, Outlook. SQL Server exe goes down. That's your database operations disrupted. Outlook exe goes down. That's email communication cut off. This is exactly what you think it is. Malware engineered by elite professionals. People who understand Windows systems inside and out. People who've thought through every step of the process. And if this level of sophistication is just what they're showing on the surface, what else are they hiding? I was saving the best for last. If you stayed this far, congratulations. Here we found hidden in the code another command line parameter. /wipe mode. At first they thought it was a mistake, a leftover from development, maybe some debug function that got left behind. But that wasn't the case. Files don't just get encrypted with the wiper module. They get erased. Completely. Traditional ransomware works like a kidnapping. They take your files hostage, lock them up with encryption. But they keep them intact. Because if they destroy the files, there's no ransom payment to be made. It's a business transaction. Twisted, but still a transaction. Pay us. Get your files back. But /wipe mode changes everything. It requires the same key-based authentication as the main program. This is intentional, designed, built on purpose. When Anubis runs in wipe mode, your files don't just disappear, they get overwritten. All bits turn to 0, overwriting its contents with null bytes. There's no decryption key that can bring them back. There's no negotiation, no payment that will restore what's been wiped. Your family photos, your business documents, your financial records, your entire digital life. Gone. Permanently. This breaks every rule of ransomware. It takes away the one thing that made the whole criminal enterprise work. The possibility of recovery. But the wiper module wasn't the end of it. Researchers kept digging. And they found Anubis doesn't just destroy your files. It destroys your ability to recover them. Here's the command that seals your fate. Volume shadow copies. Most people have never heard of them. But they're Windows automatic backup feature. Every time your system creates a restore point, it's making shadow copies of your files. When your computer crashes and you restore to yesterday, where do you think those files come from? Shadow copies. When you accidentally delete something important and Windows lets you recover it, shadow copies. It's the safety net you never knew you had. But Anubis steals that from you. That /quiet parameter? That means it deletes everything silently. No prompts, no warnings. And while researchers discovered the true extent of this beast, the victims kept coming. 5 organizations by March 24th, 2025. 8 by June. Each one discovering the same horrifying reality. Trust me, you don't want Anubis in your network. Before we go anywhere, let me be clear about something. There's another piece of malware out there called Anubis that's been around since 2016, but that one is Android-based. That one's a banking Trojan. It targets financial apps on mobile devices, 394 of them to be exact. This Windows ransomware is something entirely different. Just to be clear so you don't get confused if you look it up yourself. Anyway, the Anubis operators? They're not perfect. They tried to add a wallpaper change feature. It failed. They attempted icon modifications. Those didn't work either. Even sophisticated malware has limitations. Even elite professionals make mistakes. This is what evolution in the ransomware landscape looks like. Complete destruction. Permanent loss. No recovery possible. Yet again, the rules have begun to change. To any of you watching who are building wiper malware, please don't. You know Krispy Kreme. Everyone does. Over 30 countries, more than 11,000 locations, 22,000 employees worldwide. They've got partnerships with McDonald's. Their headquarters sits in Charlotte, North Carolina. But their glazed donuts reach across continents. 15.5% of their sales come from online ordering. People don't just walk into stores anymore. They tap their phones. They click add to cart. Then one day, customers across parts of the United States couldn't place online orders. The apps wouldn't work. The websites failed. But walk into a physical store? Everything seemed normal. Staff smiled. Donuts glazed. Registers rang. The company said they were experiencing technical difficulties. Stores in other countries other than the United States processed online orders just fine. So what happened? Well, I'm about to tell you exactly that. Just remember, when hackers target something you love, something as innocent as ordering donuts from your couch, nowhere feels safe anymore. Starting on the 19th of November in 2024, for 10 days, something was moving through their network. November 29th, that's when they finally detected unauthorized activity. While you were trying to order donuts and getting error messages, attackers were using tools called Cobalt Strike and System BC. These are military-grade penetration testing tools, and usually companies will actually pay security professionals to use them in their network. Except, criminals stole the tools ages ago. Now, every criminal has them. They also use something called PS-exec to execute commands remotely across the network. They deployed Mimikatz. Mimikatz is a credential harvesting tool. It extracts usernames and passwords directly from computer memory. Every time someone logs in, their credentials sit in RAM for a brief moment. Mimikatz grabs them. Within hours, they had domain administrator access. That's game over for Krispy Kreme. While customers had issues ordering, the attackers were running WinPeas. That's a tool that scans for privilege escalation paths. It looks for weaknesses, misconfigurations, anything that can be exploited to gain higher permissions. They distributed executables through group policy objects. That's the system administrators use to push software updates across entire networks. The attackers hijacked it, made it work for them instead. Then came AdFind. It's a command line tool that queries Active Directory. Active Directory is like the phone book for corporate networks. It tells you who has access to what, where sensitive data lives, how systems connect. They mapped everything. All of this happened while the company thought they were dealing with routine technical difficulties. December 11th. That's when everything changed. Krispy Kreme filed with the SEC. Here's what they said. On November 29th, 2024, Krispy Kreme, Inc. was notified regarding unauthorized activity on a portion of its information technology systems. Corporate speak for, "We got hacked. The stock price dropped 2% that day. Wall Street doesn't like when you get hacked." But here's what the filing didn't tell you. The attackers had been busy. They'd encrypted files using an AES RSA hybrid algorithm. Once it's locked, it stays locked without the key. But they were smart about it. They used intermittent encryption. Instead of encrypting every single byte of every file, they encrypted every other chunk of data. Specifically, every other chunk, as shown on the screen here. Why? Speed. Full encryption takes time. Intermittent encryption makes files just as unusable but finishes faster. Less chance of getting caught mid-process. They skipped system files entirely. No point encrypting the operating system if you want the computer to boot up and display your ransom note. Every encrypted file got tagged with a .play extension. That's the hacker's signature, but we'll get to that soon enough. For the SXE systems, things got more serious. The attackers powered off every virtual machine first. Then they encrypted the .vmdk files and .vmem files with AES-256 encryption. Those files contain the virtual hard drives and memory snapshots of entire computer systems. They left a file called play_readme.txt in every encrypted directory. The IT team at Krispy Kreme was staring at thousands of encrypted files. Meanwhile, claims started surfacing on dark web leak sites. Whispers in criminal forums, screenshots of internal documents, proof of access. But the public SEC filing? It said they were working with cybersecurity experts and law enforcement. What it didn't say was how deep the criminals had gone, what they'd taken, who was behind it. If you're in the cybercrime scene, you'll know the .play extension was an awful sign for Krispy Kreme indeed. Eight days after the SEC filing, the Play ransomware gang claimed responsibility on their dark web leak site, Play. That's who was behind the .play extension. That's who had been moving through Krispy Kreme's network for weeks. They've been operating since June 2022. By now, they've targeted approximately 900 organizations. 900. That's pretty filthy. They conduct negotiations through email, professional communications during business hours. They've even got terms and conditions. Are awful. Behind the scenes, while Krispy Kreme was dealing with encrypted systems and public relations, the Play gang was negotiating. There were emails back and forth, demands, counteroffers, and, deadlines. But the negotiations were failing. December 21st. That became the ultimatum date. Pay by then, or everything they'd stolen would hit the dark web. Time is ticking. December 21st. The ultimatum deadline hit. Krispy Kreme didn't pay. Multiple archives appeared on the Play gang's dark web leak site. Hundreds of gigabytes of stolen data, all compressed, organized, ready for download. The dark website looked like any other file-sharing platform. Clean interface, search functions, download links, archive after archive, each one labeled with clinical precision. Krispy_Kreme_payroll. Krispy Kreme financial. Krispy Kreme client documents. Here's what they released. Payroll information, client documents, financial records, accounting data, employee IDs, tax files. But here's the technical reality of how they got it. They used a custom VSS copying tool. VSS stands for Volume Shadow Copy Service. It's a Windows feature that creates automatic backup snapshots of your hard drive. These shadow copies often contain more sensitive data than the current file system. Deleted files that were supposed to be gone. Previous versions of documents with different security settings. You get the idea. The Play gang's custom tool copied these shadow volumes. Then they compressed the stolen data using WinRAR. They used WinSCP to move the compressed archives out of the network. WinSCP is legitimate file transfer software. I was literally using WinSCP today at my day job to transfer log files across the network. It's weird to think it was used for a gigantic heist. Anyway, the public had no idea that the negotiations had failed privately. The data was now public in criminal circles. But the victims? They were the last to know. The Play ransomware gang had won again. "7 months after hundreds of gigabytes hit the dark web. 7 months of silence. That's when Krispy Kreme finally revealed the true impact. 161,676 individuals affected. Nearly 200,000 people. Their personal information was sitting on criminal servers now. Social security numbers, bank details, driver's license details. The holy trinity of identity theft. Everything you need to become someone else. The company's response to the victims? 12 months of identity monitoring through Kroll, starting June 16th. Single bureau credit monitoring, fraud consultation, identity theft restoration services. Honestly, not bad, but still wouldn't want to be in that position in the first place. Krispy Kreme never stood a chance. The Play Gang uses binary recompilation for each attack. That means they modify their malware code slightly for every target. Every time they hit a new company, they recompile their code and create new fingerprints for their ransomware. Security systems don't recognize the fingerprint because it changed from the previous attack. The malware appears completely unknown. The Play Gang had custom malware called Grixpa for network reconnaissance and antivirus scanning. They deployed Alpha VSS for their own shadow volume copying operations. They used defense evasion tools like GMER, IOBit, and PowerTool. These actively disable security software and erase forensic logs. Play is an advanced criminal enterprise operating with business efficiency. Their double extortion models ensure you don't escape without losing something. When the .play file extension can target something as innocent as ordering donuts, they can target anything. December 4th, 2018. Just another Tuesday at Cyberome's Security Operations Center in India. The alert came through like thousands of others. Network scanning activity. Routine stuff. The kind of noise that fills every security analyst's dashboard every single day. But this wasn't routine. What they were seeing was Cloud Snooper. A rootkit so sophisticated it could hide in the deepest parts of their systems while simultaneously pivoting into Amazon Web Services infrastructure. It was using compromised AWS management tools to leapfrog between victims. The analysts didn't know it yet, but they were staring at Chinese threat groups. Volt Typhoon, APT-31, APT-41, also known as Windy. Cyberome wasn't just another victim. They were a cybersecurity company, part of Sophos, one of the biggest names in the business. The very people whose job it was to protect others from exactly this kind of attack. What looked like a simple network scan that December morning was actually the opening move in a 5-year cyber war, which I'm about to tell you all about, so you better sit back and don't go anywhere. Two years passed. By 2020, the attacks weren't quiet anymore. The threat actors were developing zero-day exploits. First came Bookmark, CVE 2020-15-069, a sophisticated attack that let them inject malicious code directly into web applications. Then Asnaruk, CVE 2020-12-271, mass attacks using SQL injection techniques that manipulated database queries to steal credentials and gain unauthorized access. But one persona stood out. T. Stark. T. Stark had connections to Chengdu University of Technology, academic credentials, research papers, the kind of background that screams legitimate cybersecurity researcher. Except T. Stark was targeting a Tibetan exile organization. Why would a Chinese university researcher be attacking Tibetan activists? They were systematically targeting anyone who opposed Chinese interests. Activists, dissidents, organizations supporting Tibetan independence. T. Stark was just getting started. Early 2022. The attackers found CVE 2022-1040, an open SSL command injection vulnerability. This flaw let them execute system commands by sending malicious input that the software couldn't properly validate. Think of it like, whispering instructions directly into a computer's ear. The system thinks it's processing normal data, but it's actually following attack commands. They'd been working on this vulnerability in secret, testing it, perfecting it. And now, they were ready to deploy their most sophisticated creation yet, Pygmy Goat. The first targets were the same Tibetan exile organization T. Stark had been hunting. And there was also a government agency whose identity, well, would remain classified. These were high-value targets where maximum damage could be done with minimal detection. Pygmy Goat was a backdoor, so advanced it could maintain persistent access while operating completely invisibly. No alerts, no warning signs, no indication that anything had changed. The malware nestled deep into system processes. It looked like legitimate software, behaved like legitimate software, but it was watching, learning, collecting, The victims had no idea they were compromised. In the background, Pygmy Goat was establishing permanent access and creating secret communication channels. March 21st, 2022. A bug bounty submission landed in the OpenSSL project's inbox. The researcher claimed to have discovered CVE 2022-1040, the same command injection vulnerability that was already powering Pygmy Goat attacks. Bug bounty programs are supposed to be the good guys. Security researchers find vulnerabilities and report them responsibly. Companies fix the flaws before bad actors can exploit them. Everyone wins. This submission looked legitimate. Professional documentation, technical analysis, the kind of detailed report that gets researchers paid and systems protected. But something was off. The researcher claimed to be based in Japan, but the submission came from a Chinese IP address. Not the biggest red flag, but, something worth mentioning. 3 days later, Sophos began retro-hunt analysis. This is where they dug through historical data looking for evidence of past attacks involving CVE 2022-1040. What they found was shocking. The vulnerability had been actively exploited for weeks before it was discovered. The same CVE 2022-1040 flaw that the researcher claimed to find was already being used in live attacks against the Tibetan Exile Organization, against that classified government agency. The timeline was impossible to ignore. Pygmy Goat deployments using this exact vulnerability had occurred before the bug bounty submission was even filed. So who submitted the bug bounty? At the time, it came from a pseudonym username. They claimed a $20,000 USD reward. Let me show you what investigators discovered when they finally understood the full scope of this malware. Every time someone made an SSH connection on an infected system, Pygmy Goat was watching. It used LD_preload injection to insert itself into legitimate processes. Think of it as malware DNA splicing itself into healthy cells. The system thinks it's running normal software, but every legitimate program now carries malicious code. The malware was dormant until activated by magic bytes. Secret codes hidden in network traffic that would wake it up and give it instructions. Like, sleeper agents. Just waiting for their activation signal. When Pygmy Goat needed to communicate back to its controllers, it used ICMP tunneling. This technique hides malicious communications inside innocent-looking network traffic. The same packets your computer uses to check if websites are responding were secretly carrying stolen data and attack commands. To security teams, everything looked normal. Traffic patterns were legitimate. Certificates appeared valid. The malware just had camouflage. The thing was, Pygmy Goat wasn't just in a few targets anymore. Nuclear facilities across South Asia, compromised. International airports handling millions of passengers, infiltrated. Military hospitals treating wounded soldiers, under surveillance. Government ministries making national security decisions, completely penetrated. Critical infrastructure that millions of people depend on every single day was being monitored by foreign intelligence services. Power grids, communication networks, transportation systems. This was the peak of a 5-year campaign that had started with a simple network scan at a cybersecurity company. The Chinese hackers could see everything. Internal communications, classified documents, real-time operations data. And their victims had no idea they were being watched. Sophos, the cybersecurity company that had been blindsided by that routine alert back in 2018, was about to become something different. A hunter. They deployed custom implants into the attacker's infrastructure. Think of these as reverse backdoors. Instead of the attackers watching victims, now Sophos was watching the attackers. Like the hackers, they now had real-time observation of threat actor activities. They could see the hackers coding new malware, watch them test exploits, and monitor their communications. It was like having a hidden camera in the enemy's war room. By late 2022, Sophos was tracking UEFI bootkit development. This is firmware-level malware that targets the system startup process before your operating system even loads. Firmware controls hardware at the lowest level, and if attackers compromise it, they own your machine before it finishes booting up. Through 2023, the evolution continued. Firmware hooking attacks emerged that could survive complete system reinstalls. The Chengdu research ecosystem isn't just one university. It's a network connecting academic researchers to state-sponsored operations. Students and professors are developing research that becomes weapons. Academic papers are actually attack blueprints. T. Stark wasn't a lone wolf. T. Stark was part of a system that turns universities into cyber warfare development labs. Current protective measures are in place across critical infrastructure. The nuclear facilities, airports, and government ministries that were compromised now have detection capabilities specifically designed to catch these techniques. Manual detection is actually simpler than you'd think. Security teams now know to check for specific file paths like these ones I'm showing you here. If you find these files where they shouldn't be, you found trouble. Yara rules can detect Pygmy Goat's malware patterns, and Snort signatures identify malicious network traffic. But this story isn't over. Consider subscribing if you want to stay up to date with state-sponsored threats like this one. 3 billion people carry an Android device. Right now, you probably have one within arm's reach. You trust it with your banking passwords, your crypto wallets, your entire life, pretty much. Well, it's being weaponized against you. Your phone has accessibility features built right into the operating system. They're designed to help people with disabilities interact with their devices. Apps can request permission to read your screen, tap buttons for you, even fill out forms on your behalf. It's a beautiful feature when used properly. Cybercriminals call it their favorite backdoor. On darknet forums, advanced Android malware sells for $5,000 a month. That's not a one-time purchase. That's a monthly subscription to steal from people like you. $5,000 every month. May 26th, 2022. Ermac 2.0 hits the underground markets. The criminals behind it had expanded their target list from 378 banking and cryptocurrency apps to 467. That's nearly 100 more ways to steal your money. They needed a way to distribute this malware without triggering every security system on the planet. So they picked something nobody would suspect. Food delivery. Polish users started receiving messages about a new Bolt Food app. Bolt Food is a legitimate European food delivery service. You've probably seen their green logo around town. The criminals set up Bolt Food bracket site. Close enough to fool anyone scrolling through messages on their phone. It's an easy mistake. You're hungry. You get a text about downloading the Bolt Food app for a special discount. The link looks right. The app icon looks right. You download it. The moment you install that fake app, you're giving criminals access to 43 different device permissions through the accessibility service. SMS access, your contacts, audio recording, complete storage access. They can create system alert windows. They can read every notification. They can watch everything you do on your screen. But they weren't done yet. The malware connected back to its roots in Cerberus, an older banking Trojan. They shared similarities. But Ermac 2.0 introduced something called overlay attacks, fake interfaces that appear over real banking apps. You open your bank app, but you're actually looking at a perfect replica controlled by criminals. Commands like downloading injections and download injection let the malware receive custom HTML pages designed to mimic your specific banking app. You enter your credentials thinking you're logging into your real bank account. Instead, you're handing over your username and password directly to crims. The Polish users thought they were ordering pizza. They were actually installing professional-grade surveillance software. Don't go anywhere because we're only just getting started. March 28th, 2025. A new malware emerges called Crocodilus. This is where everything changed because this wasn't another piece of Android malware. The criminals behind it figured out something that all the previous malware missed. Technical skills only get you so far. You need to manipulate the human mind too. Here's exactly what they did. Don't copy them, okay? You open your cryptocurrency wallet app. Everything looks normal. Then you see a message. Back up your wallet key in the settings within 12 hours. Otherwise, the app will be reset, and you may lose access to your wallet. 12 hours. Your crypto could be gone forever if you don't act now. That message isn't from your wallet app. It's from Crocodilus. Social engineering at its most sophisticated level. While you're panicking about backing up your wallet, the malware is already working. Rat command, which is shown here, captures your Google Authenticator screens using accessibility logging capabilities. Every two-factor authentication code you generate gets sent directly to the attackers, while this other command here creates black overlays that hide malicious activity while muting your device. You're looking at a black screen thinking your phone froze. Meanwhile, the malware is transferring your cryptocurrency to criminal wallets. You can't see it. You can't hear it. Your phone appears completely dead. Meanwhile, the hackers run additional commands to stream from your camera and simulate screen gestures. They're not just stealing from you. They're controlling your device like a puppet. Currently, the malware was observed targeting banks and cryptocurrency wallets across Turkey and Spain. But this kind of attack? It won't stay regional for long. This combines session-based Android bypasses with sophisticated psychological manipulation. It doesn't just hack your phone, it hacks your mind. The criminals understand that fear makes people act irrationally. The threat of losing access to your crypto wallet triggers immediate panic. You'll do anything to prevent losing all your Bitcoin, including giving criminals exactly what they want. The investigation into Crocodilus revealed something interesting. Debug messages were scattered throughout the code and, well, they were written in Turkish. That's not an accident. When developers are coding, they usually write debug messages in their native language. It's just instinctive, you know? The researchers started connecting the dots, and Crocodilus actually showed similarities to other malware families. Specifically, variants connected to a threat actor known as Cybra. Cybra operates multiple Ermac forks and other banking Trojans. They're part of a network that specializes in financial theft. Linguistic indicators are huge. Turkish debug messages, specific coding styles, and even the way variables are named can reveal the developer's background. The targeting pattern tells another story too. Turkey and Spain aren't random choices. These regions have growing cryptocurrency adoption, but less mature security infrastructure than places like the United States or Germany. The connection to Cybra really shows how modern cybercrime operates. They're part of coordinated campaigns run by organized groups. You get the drill. Crocodilus represents the latest evolution of criminal operations that spans multiple malware families and years of development. And I'm unveiling it all to you right here, right now. For free, so subscribe if you want to continue supporting me. The Crocodilus samples that we found had a deceptively simple app name. Chrome. The package name is seen here. The SHA-256 hash is the threat to look for in your logs. That's the unique fingerprint. And it never changes. Now all of us working to protect networks can identify this exact malware variant. The command and control server? RegisterBuzzy.store. Researchers documented the specific rat commands that gave attackers complete device control. This command here handles call forwarding. This other one I'm showing you here launches applications remotely. The command king-only-dear sends SMS messages on the victim's behalf. These aren't random strings. They look like it, but they're actually the commands hackers are typing into shells to control your device. You know, between 2022 and 2025, Google promised Android 13 would deliver better security, new restrictions, better protections. But criminals like the ones running Crocodilus are always way ahead. The more you know.
Is working with cyber weapons, so the famous one was Stuxnet.
You want to assess what kind of damage and how far that kind of a malware based.
You're checking your bank balance on your phone. Same app you've used for months. Clean interface. Fast loading. Everything looks normal. But what if I told you that banking app might be running inside a criminal's virtual playground? 3 years ago, over 10 million people downloaded something called MYT Music from Google Play. Turkish music app. Looked completely legitimate. Had the downloads. Had the reviews. Had that polished interface that screams official. Those 10 million users had no idea they'd just installed one of the most deadliest pieces of malware ever created. Behind that music app was something called Godfather malware. And it wasn't interested in your playlist. By the end of this story, you'll understand why your banking app might be lying to you, and why traditional security measures don't work against what's coming next. March 2021. That's when researchers were digging through malware samples when they spot something new. They call it Godfather. Here's how it worked back then. You'd open your legitimate banking app. Everything looks normal. But suddenly, a fake login screen slides over the real one. Perfect replica. Same colors, same buttons, same logo. You enter your username and password into what looks like your bank's interface, but you're actually typing into a criminal's fake screen that's layered on top of your real app. This is called an overlay attack. The legitimate app is still running underneath, but the malware displays a fraudulent interface over it. You see the fake screen. You interact with the fake screen. Your credentials go straight to the criminals. Think of it like putting a transparent sheet of paper over a book. You can still see the book underneath, but anything you write goes on the paper, not in the book. It was effective. Really effective. Users had no idea they were interacting with a fake interface instead of their real banking app. But overlay attacks had a problem. They were detectable. Security software could spot these fake screens being drawn over legitimate apps. The overlays left evidence in a way, patterns that researchers could identify and block. The criminals behind Godfather knew this. They understood their method worked, but it wouldn't work forever. So they started planning something bigger. Something that would make overlay attacks look primitive by comparison. What they came up with would shock you, so stay with me. December 2022. Almost a year later, and researchers publish reports that change everything we thought we knew about Godfather. The malware had exploded across the globe. Over 400 banks and cryptocurrency exchanges, 16 countries. This wasn't some small-time operation targeting a few Turkish banks anymore. This was now an international cybercrime operation. But the expansion wasn't just geographic. Godfather had evolved. New capabilities that made overlay attacks look like child's play. Key logging. Every single keystroke you make gets recorded. Your passwords, your PINs, your messages. Everything you type captured and sent to criminals halfway around the world. Screen recording. They're not just stealing your keystrokes anymore. They're recording everything happening on your screen. Every app you open. Every transaction you make. Every balance you check. Then there's VNC, virtual network computing. This is where it gets really invasive. VNC lets criminals remotely control your device like they're sitting right next to you. They can tap buttons, swipe screens, navigate through your apps, all while you're completely unaware. Imagine the thought of that. You just set your phone down for a minute. Maybe you're grabbing coffee. Maybe you're in the bathroom. During that time, criminals are actively using your device, opening your banking app, transferring money, all with your legitimate credentials on your legitimate device. That's real, and it could happen to you if you're not careful. The scale was staggering. Hundreds of financial institutions across North America, Europe, Asia. Major cryptocurrency exchanges, regional banks, credit unions. No institution was too big or too small. Despite this massive expansion, traditional detection methods still worked. Antivirus software could spot the keyloggers. Security systems could identify the VNC connections. The screen recording left logs. That was about to change. April 2024. We got the numbers and, honestly, it's scary. There were 1,200 samples of Godfather malware, 57 countries affected, 237 banking apps targeted. The scale was just overwhelming. But, what really worried researchers wasn't the numbers. It was the pattern. All those samples weren't just plain copies. They were variations, different versions, each testing different approaches, different techniques. Like, imagine a criminal laboratory running thousands of experiments at once. Sample proliferation at this scale means there's active development happening. And, well, traditional security measures were starting to show cracks. Sure, antivirus software could still catch most of the keyloggers. Security systems could still spot the VNC connections. But researchers were seeing gaps, delays in detection, techniques that took longer to identify. Even more concerning were the reports trickling in from security firms. Samples that didn't match any known patterns. behavior that just didn't fit the overlay model. Techniques that seemed to bypass traditional detection entirely. Something was coming. Something that would make keylogging and screen recording look, honestly, primitive. Researchers knew it. They could feel it in the data. The criminals behind Godfather were preparing to break new ground. June 2025. Godfather had solved the fundamental problem that plagued every mobile attack method. That problem was being detected. Overlay attacks? Security software could spot fake screens being drawn over real apps. Keyloggers? They left traces every single time they captured your keystrokes. Screen recording? The recording activity triggered alerts. VNC remote control? Those connections were visible to network monitoring. But virtualization changed everything. And here's why this is so much worse than anything that came before. Your banking app is completely real. Not a fake copy. Not a modified version. The actual legitimate app, downloaded straight from your bank. But it's running inside a controlled environment where, basically, every single interaction can be intercepted. Every tap, every swipe, every password you enter, every transaction you make. The criminals aren't injecting malicious code into your app. They're not overlaying fake screens. They're not installing obvious keyloggers. They're running your legitimate app in their own virtual playground. The victim interacts with the legitimate app's UI, totally unaware that their actions are being spied on or manipulated. This is why traditional security measures became useless overnight. Security software looks for malicious behavior, suspicious code, unusual network activity, signs that, something is wrong, but virtualization presents completely normal behavior. Your app works perfectly. It connects to your bank normally. It performs transactions normally. All the while, criminals watch and record everything. This has been a massive leap in mobile threat capabilities. Because when everything appears legitimate, how do you detect the threat? The answer terrified me. You can't. Now I'll show you exactly how they built this virtual playground. The criminals didn't actually create this technology from scratch. They weaponized legitimate tools. Virtual App. It's an open source project that lets you run multiple instances of apps on your phone. Developers use it for testing. Power users use it to run multiple social media accounts. Completely legitimate software. Exposed framework. Another open source tool that lets you modify how apps behave without changing their code. Security researchers use it. App developers use it for debugging. Also completely legitimate. But Godfather turned these tools into weapons. Okay. So here's how the attack unfolds step by step. For example, when you install that innocent-looking music app I told you about, it actually creates this process I'm showing you here on your device. This process launches through something called stub activity, which, creates a virtual file system. Think of this as building a perfect replica of your phone's environment, right inside your actual phone. Now, your banking app runs in this replica environment. It sees what looks like your normal phone. It connects normally, but every action gets intercepted. The exposed framework hooks into this build method. This is basically the pathway most apps use to communicate with their servers. Every HTTP request your banking app makes, every response it receives, all of it gets captured and analyzed. Your login credentials, your account balances, your transaction details, everything flows through systems controlled by criminals. But they didn't stop there. They built advanced evasion techniques to avoid detection by security researchers. Zip file manipulation using something called JADX block fields. These misleading entries confuse decompilation tools, making it harder for researchers to analyze the malware's code. And the remote control capabilities are extensive. The criminals can execute commands like the long list here that I'm showing you. Some of them are self-explanatory. They can control your screen brightness, lock your phone, navigate through your apps, simulate gestures and taps, complete device control while you remain completely unaware. Here's what makes an app look real on Google Play. Download numbers in the millions. User reviews that seem authentic. official-looking screenshots, professional descriptions, all the visual cues that tell your brain this is safe. Make sure you only download apps from Google Play. Yes, even Google Play isn't perfect, but it'll stop you getting infected with most Android malware. Second, enable Play Protect on your device. It catches known threats. Third, be extremely cautious of apps requesting accessibility permissions. Accessibility services are designed to help users with disabilities, but they're also the gateway that allows malware to control your device. Godfather isn't an isolated case. We're seeing similar virtualization techniques emerge in other malware families, including variants related to Fjord Phantom. Fjord Phantom, a related malware strain, had just stolen $280,000 from a single victim. One person. One attack. Nearly $300,000 gone. But I'll save the video on Fjord Phantom for another time. If you want to keep in the loop with Android malware, consider subscribing to the channel and I'll be the first to let you know. A single piece of code terrorized the world for 17 years. It hit over 700,000 computers across the globe. This is Crocbot's story. So there you are one day checking your email, and there's a message that looks completely normal. Maybe it's from your bank, or a shipping company, or even a colleague. You click it. In that moment, you've just handed the keys to your life to one of the most persistent cybercriminals in history. I'm the operator, and from the shadows of the hacker gallery, let me tell you about Rustam Rafailovich Galyamov, a name that should send chills down the spine of anyone who's ever trusted an email. In 2008, Galyamov launched something that would redefine what malware could be. He called it Crocbot. But this wasn't your typical virus. This was something far more sophisticated, far more dangerous. Here's what made Crocbot special and terrifying. It had what we call a modular design. Think of it like digital Lego blocks. Galyamov could swap out pieces, add new functions, upgrade its capabilities without starting from scratch. One day, it's stealing your banking passwords. The next day, it's opening doors for ransomware gangs. But here's where it gets truly sinister. Crocbot had worm-like capabilities. It didn't just sit on your computer waiting for you to accidentally spread it. No. It actively hunted for new victims. It would scan your network, find other computers, and infect them automatically. Your office printer, your colleague's laptop, the server in the basement. Everything was fair game. The command and control servers, we call them C2 servers, were Galyamov's puppet strings. These were computers scattered around the world that he used to send orders to every infected machine. When he wanted to steal financial data from hospitals in Chicago, launch ransomware attacks on government contractors in Texas, or lock up patient records in dental offices in Los Angeles, he just had to type a command, and the damage. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars lost, healthcare systems crippled, financial institutions compromised. He even targeted law enforcement networks. But here's what made Crocbot truly unstoppable in those early years. It exploited something that still haunts cybersecurity today: unpatched systems. You know those annoying software updates that pop up on your computer? The ones you keep clicking remind me later on. By 2019, Galyamov had a problem. Banking Trojans were becoming old news. Security companies were getting better at catching keyloggers. So he did what every smart criminal does when the heat gets too hot. He evolved. Crocbot transformed from a simple password thief into something far more sinister. A delivery system for the world's most devastating ransomware gangs. Conti, Black Basta. Names that would make corporate security teams break out in cold sweats. These weren't just hackers anymore. They were extortionists running multi-million-dollar operations. Galyamov started using XOR encrypted strings. That's a method of scrambling data that makes it nearly impossible to detect what the malware is actually doing until it's too late. He also built dynamic C2 server lists. Instead of hard-coding server addresses that investigators could find and shut down, Crocbot would constantly update its command centers. Like a criminal always changing safe houses. But let me tell you about Dr. Sarah Chen. She ran a dental practice in Los Angeles. 30 years of building her business, treating families, keeping meticulous patient records. On May 5th, 2020, she opened what looked like a routine email about a dental supply shipment. The attachment was a Microsoft Word document that seemed completely normal. That document was weaponized. Hidden inside was malicious code that exploited unpatched vulnerabilities in her Windows system. The moment she opened it, Cockbot slithered into her network like a horrific break. And enter, it didn't just steal data. It opened the door for ransomware that encrypted every patient record, every appointment schedule, every piece of data that kept her practice running. Dr. Chen watched helplessly as her computer screens filled with ransom demands. Decades of work, locked away behind encryption that would take centuries to crack. The hackers wanted Bitcoin. They always wanted Bitcoin. This wasn't just malware anymore. It had become a gateway for the world's worst ransomware crews. Cockbot would scout the target, map the network, steal credentials, then call in the heavy hitters to deliver the killing blow. But law enforcement was watching. The FBI had been tracking Cockbot's evolution, and by 2023, they were ready to strike back. Operation Duck Hunt launched on August 29th, 2023. The name might sound playful, but this was serious business. FBI cyber specialists had found something incredible. A misconfigured server belonging to one of Cockbot's administrators. It was like finding an unlocked door to the enemy's war room. They cracked into that system and found treasure troves of incriminating evidence. Files with names like payments.txt that contained detailed records of every victim, every ransom payment, every successful attack. The FBI had captured Cockbot's XOR encryption key, the key that let them decrypt all the criminal communications. But the real genius was what came next. The FBI didn't just shut down the servers. They hijacked the entire botnet. Every infected computer that tried to contact Cockbot's command centers was redirected to FBI servers instead. Then they pushed out an uninstaller, a piece of software with the SHA-256 hash, showing you on the screen here, that would clean the infection from hundreds of thousands of machines for a moment. It looked like victory. The botnet was dismantled. The criminals were on the run. Press releases declared success. Galyamov went quiet for months. Then January 2025 arrived, and the nightmare began again. Spam bombs. That was Galyamov's new weapon. Instead of carefully crafted phishing emails, he flooded inboxes with thousands of messages. The volume was so overwhelming that it buried legitimate emails. It made people desperate to clear their inboxes. In that desperation, they'd click on anything. These weren't random attacks either. Galyamov had learned from his mistakes. He was hijacking existing email threads, conversations between colleagues, discussions about legitimate business. Then he'd inject malicious Excel 4.0 documents loaded with VBA macros. These files looked like normal spreadsheets, but they contained executable code that would run the moment someone opened them. His new targets were IT staff, the very people responsible for keeping networks secure. The social engineering was masterful. Emails that looked like urgent security alerts, software updates, or critical system notifications. The people most qualified to spot these attacks were being specifically targeted. On January 17th, 2025, a Pennsylvania technology company fell victim to this new strategy. The attack started with a spam bomb that overwhelmed their email security. One IT administrator, drowning in alerts and desperate to restore normal operations, opened what looked like a system diagnostic file. Cockbot version 0x500 was waiting inside. Galyamov had upgraded his encryption again, this time using AES string decryption, making the malware even harder to detect and analyze. Within hours, black Basta ransomware had encrypted the company's entire network. The ransom demand, 19.8142 Bitcoin, over $1 million. Law enforcement realized they were dealing with a new kind of enemy. This wasn't just a criminal. This was an architect who learned from every defeat. Galyamov was still winning. May 22nd, 2025. The day Rustam Rafaelovich Galyamov's world came crashing down. You're a cybercriminal who's been running a global operation for 17 years. You think you're untouchable. You think Bitcoin makes you invisible. You're wrong. The FBI had spent years following the breadcrumbs. Every Bitcoin transaction Galyamov thought was anonymous, it's actually recorded forever on the blockchain. A permanent ledger that anyone can read if they know how. The investigators used blockchain analysis to trace every payment. Think of it like following a paper trail, except this trail is made of math and it never disappears. Each Bitcoin wallet has a unique address, and when money moves between wallets, that transaction gets recorded permanently. Remember that payments.txt file the FBI found during Operation Duck Hunt? It wasn't just a list of victims, it contained wallet addresses, the digital equivalent of bank account numbers. Those addresses became the smoking gun. Here's what the feds discovered. Galyamov had accumulated a fortune. 30 bitcoins, $700,000 in USDT tokens. That's a type of cryptocurrency designed to stay stable, like the dollar. Combined with other seized assets, they grabbed over $24 million. But this wasn't just about the money. The indictment hit Galyamov with conspiracy and wire fraud charges. Conspiracy means planning crimes with others. In this case, his entire cockbot network. Wire fraud is using technology to steal money, which perfectly described his 17-year campaign. The breakthrough came from those C2 server IP addresses, the computer locations that controlled the cockbot malware. Every time an infected machine checked in with these servers, it left a record. The FBI connected these server logs to the payment records, building a chain of evidence. For nearly 2 decades, Galyamov had operated in the shadows. He'd evolved from stealing banking passwords to enabling the world's most destructive ransomware gangs. He'd cost victims hundreds of millions of dollars. And now, very technology he'd used to hide his tracks had betrayed him. The seizure dismantled criminal financial networks across the United States and Europe. Catching Galyamov was just the beginning. While the FBI celebrated their blockchain breakthrough, a much bigger operation was already in motion across the globe. May 27th through 29th, 2024. Law enforcement didn't just go after one man. They went after the entire ecosystem that made Cockbot possible. This operation targeted what cybersecurity experts call loaders, specialized malware designed to download and install other malicious programs on infected computers. Think of loaders like digital doormen for cyber criminals. Programs like Iced ID and TrickBot would get onto your computer first, then open the door for more dangerous malware, like Cockbot or ransomware, to walk right in. The numbers from Operation Endgame were staggering. Law enforcement seized over 2,000 domains and more than 100 servers. They used network traffic analysis, basically monitoring the flow of data between computers to map out the entire criminal network. But here's what made this operation both successful and terrifying. They arrested 4 suspects in Armenia and Ukraine. 4 down. 8 fugitives escaped and landed on Europol's most wanted list. 8 dangerous hackers were still out there. While investigators hunted fugitives, they faced another massive challenge: telling victims they'd been infected. Remember, Cockbot had hit over 700,000 computers worldwide. How do you notify that many people? The answer came from those C2 server logs I mentioned earlier. Every time an infected computer checked in with Quackbot's command and control servers, it left behind IP logs and routing data. Basically, a record of which computer connected from where and when. Investigators worked with cybersecurity companies to turn this data into victim notifications. Have I Been Pwned, a website that tracks data breaches, integrated what are called Quackbot IOCs. IOCs stands for Indicators of Compromise. These are like digital fingerprints that malware leaves behind on infected systems. One of the key fingerprints Quackbot left was in your computer's registry. The Windows registry is like your computer's memory bank. It stores settings and configurations for programs. Quackbot would create entries that look like this. HKey current user software, Microsoft, followed by a random string of characters. If you found that specific registry key on your computer, you were infected. But even with all these detection methods, a sobering reality remained. The mastermind was caught, but 8 of his associates were still free. You walk into a hospital emergency room and the doctors can't access your medical records, your prescription history, your allergies, your previous surgeries, all locked behind encrypted files. That's exactly what happened when Quackbot exploited CVE 2024-3051. CVE 2024-3051 is a vulnerability identifier, basically a catalog number for a specific security flaw. This one hit Windows DWM core library, which handles how your computer displays graphics in Windows. When hackers exploited this flaw, they gained deep access to hospital systems, locking away critical patient data. Go to Have I Been Pwned right now. Type in your email address. This site uses Quackbot's known C2 server IP addresses and registry artifacts, those digital fingerprints I mentioned earlier, to tell you if your accounts have been compromised. That CVE 2024-3051 vulnerability? Microsoft released a fix, but it only works if you actually install it. Enable automatic updates. Stop ignoring those restart notifications. Monitor your running processes too. Open your task manager and look for srtasks.exe. This process name is one of Quackbot's calling cards. If you see it running and you don't recognize it, your computer might be infected. A Russian-speaking threat actor emerged in December 2020. They called themselves Everest. You might be wondering why this particular group matters. Well, here's the thing. Everest has already claimed 238 victims, and they're not slowing down. These guys started out stealing data from companies. You know, the usual corporate espionage stuff. When these criminals hit your system, they encrypt all your files, basically holding your network hostage until you pay up. But Everest? They took it a step further. They don't just lock your data, they steal it first. That means even if you've got backups, they can still hurt you by threatening to leak everything. Everest has a particular taste for healthcare targets. In the United States alone, 27% of their victims are healthcare organizations. Think about that. Nearly 1 in 3 of their US attacks target the systems that keep people alive. They've recently evolved again, becoming what we call an initial access broker, or IAB. Think of them as professional lockpickers who sell their keys to other criminals. They're not just breaking in themselves anymore. And now, they're expanding their arsenal. June 2024. Nidec Corporation, a major Japanese firm, discovered something was very wrong. Their network had been breached and the damage was massive. 50,694 files stolen. But not one, but 2 different criminal groups claimed responsibility for the attack. Let me give you some context. Everest isn't just any ransomware group. Their code is actually linked to something called the Everest 2.0 family. And they've got connections to Blackbyte, one of Russia's most notorious ransomware operations. These aren't random connections, it's a clever criminal ecosystem. The attackers got their hands on something incredibly valuable. Stolen VPN credentials from a Nidec employee. Now, for those of you who don't know, a VPN is like a secure tunnel that lets you access a company's network from anywhere in the world. It's supposed to be secure, but only if the credentials stay protected. On June 18th, a group called 8base stepped forward, claiming they'd stolen the data on June 3rd. But then, on August 8th, our old friends at Everest published the same stolen data on their dark website. This wasn't a coincidence. It was business as usual for Everest. See, they've built a reputation for taking data stolen by other cyber criminals and launching fresh extortion attempts. They're experts at that. Anyway, before we move on, we're using RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, methods for stealing more credentials. Once inside the network with those VPN credentials, the attackers executed a series of precise commands into the system, shown here. They used PowerShell and Windows Command Shell, powerful tools built into Windows, to gain deeper access. Then they moved laterally through the network using RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, basically taking control of multiple computers. The attackers ran commands to disable the firewall, delete system backups, and override normal boot failure procedures. This wasn't just some random hack. This was a methodical, professional operation. They even used advanced techniques like LSAS memory dumping and NTDS extraction, methods for stealing even more credentials once they're inside. So where were we? Oh yeah, that's right, the Nidec attack. Well, it wasn't just another data breach. It was a preview of things to come. In October 2024, Everest executed one of their most sophisticated attacks yet. This time, they didn't go after their target directly. They went through the back door, breaching SteEZ's point-of-sale vendor. If you're wondering what that means, think about it this way. Why hack one company when you can hack their supplier and get access to dozens of businesses? The numbers here are staggering. 422,075 customers had their information stolen. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about what they got. We're talking complete identity packages. Names, addresses, birth dates, driver's licenses, passport numbers, photos, signatures, medical cannabis cards, and complete purchase histories. Everything an identity thief could dream of. What makes this attack particularly interesting is how long it went undetected. The hackers had access from October 10th to November 10th, 2024. A full month of quietly siphoning data. And they were selective about their targets, focusing on just 4 California stores. The Union Square in San Francisco, Mission, also in San Francisco, Alameda, and Modesto. This attack was so effective because point-of-sale systems are supposed to be some of the most secure parts of a retail operation. They handle sensitive financial data, verify IDs, process payments, but they're also connected to everything. When you compromise a POS vendor, you're not just getting access to one system, you're getting access to their entire client network. Instead of trying to breach each store individually, Everest found the weak link, the vendor that connected them all. One breach, 4 locations, over 400,000 victims. All of the information they stole was posted on Everest's dark website. Let me take you inside Everest's technical arsenal. What I'm about to show you isn't just a collection of hacking tools. At the heart of their operation is something called Command and Control, or C2 for short. Think of it as their military command center. They use a tool called Cobalt Strike, which isn't some amateur software. This is professional-grade stuff, originally designed for real, ethical security testing. If you want to know more about Cobalt Strike, check out the Hackers That People Don't Talk About video on the Hacker Gallery YouTube channel. We've tracked 5 specific command servers that are carefully positioned across different networks to maintain constant control of their hacking operation. Everest uses a tool called Proc Dump to steal passwords and credentials from something called the LSAS process. Basically, they're grabbing the keys to every door in the building. Once they're in, they deploy network scanners. Netscan.exe, netscanpack.exe, Soft Perfect Network Scanner. These tools map out everything on the network, like a burglar casing a house. Remember the Stizzy and Nidec attacks? This is how they did it. They use these exact tools to find their way around the networks, steal credentials, and extract data. But here's the clever part. They use WinRAR. Yeah, The same program you might use to zip files, to package up all the stolen data before they take it. It's like they're gift wrapping the stolen goods. What makes them particularly dangerous is their initial access broker model. They don't just use these tools for their own attacks. They sell access to other criminal groups. It's like they're running a professional breaking and entering service for other cyber criminals. Let me show you one of their actual attack patterns. They'll scan a network using their custom tools, create a complete map of the system, then use Metasploit, a powerful hacking framework, to exploit any vulnerabilities they find, all while maintaining constant secure communication through their C2 infrastructure. Every tool has a specific purpose. Every command is tested and refined. These criminals are getting better at hacking day after day. Just when the hospitality industry thought they'd learned their lessons from the Move It hack, Everest struck again. Let me give you some quick context. The Move It attack was massive. It happened when the CL0P ransomware gang found a critical flaw in Move It Transfer, a popular file-sharing software used by thousands of companies worldwide. They exploited this weakness to steal data from multiple organizations in one of the biggest supply chain attacks of 2023. Radisson Hotels Americas was one of those victims, losing guest records in that breach. But Everest? They saw that vulnerability and took it to a whole new level with their attack on Country Inn & Suites by Radisson. What data did they steal this time exactly? Well, we're talking credit card information, sure, but that's just the beginning. They got their hands on internal emails, messages about security incidents, and even upcoming booking details. Think about that. They know who's staying where and when. They also grabbed Choice, Radisson reward account numbers, and guest tax ID information. Everest didn't just steal the data. They posted it on their dark web extortion site with a 10-day countdown clock. They applied maximum pressure, knowing that every tick of that clock means more potential damage to the hotel's reputation. This is what we call a multi-vector attack. They're hitting every possible angle. Financial data, personal information, internal communications, future bookings. It's like they're saying, we don't just want your money, we want everything. For the hotel, it was a race against time. For Everest, it was just another day at the office. January 2025. Everest made their boldest move yet, proving they could strike anywhere in the world. Their target? EVIDN, a behavioral science company in Australia. But this wasn't just another target. This was a company with direct ties to the government. Once inside Evident's network, Everest used stolen employee credentials to access the system through remote desktop protocol. Basically, they were able to control computers from anywhere in the world, as if they were sitting right in front of them. Think about that. Legitimate credentials, legitimate access methods. To the system, they looked just like regular employees. The scope of what they stole is staggering. 50 gigabytes of data. But it's not just about the volume. Evident works with some serious players. The Great Barrier Reef Foundation, Wine Australia, Bundaberg Regional Council, and even American institutions like the University of Virginia and Princeton University. Every one of these connections is now a potential vulnerability. Everest has gotten smarter about covering their tracks. They use a tool called Splashtop to quietly move data out of the network. Then they meticulously clean up after themselves, removing any trace of their tools and activities. It's like professional burglars wearing gloves and wiping down fingerprints, except this is all on the internet. The gang posted their usual ransom notice on their dark website, giving Evident 2 weeks to respond. It's a psychological game. Every day that ticks by, the pressure builds. Think about the implications. A company that works with government agencies, that analyzes behavioral patterns, that has connections to major institutions across 2 continents. All of that data, all of those insights, now up for grabs on the dark web, available to anyone willing to buy. Everest operates on their own timeline from anywhere in the world, and if you don't agree to their terms, you'll end up like Evident. The numbers tell a shocking story. In the United States alone, they've successfully popped 34% of their victims. If you want to protect yourself from hackers like this, then first, you need regular backups that are completely disconnected from your network. We call this air gapping. You need to segment your network, like having multiple security checkpoints instead of one main gate. Multi-factor authentication is absolutely crucial. That means using more than just a password. But here's what many organizations miss. You need to monitor everything. Check your remote access logs. Look for new accounts on your domain controllers and servers. Everest isn't slowing down. They're targeting construction and engineering firms, financial services, legal offices, healthcare facilities, and government agencies. Each sector needs its own specific defenses because each one handles data differently. Remember, these aren't just random hackers. This is a professional criminal organization with connections to Russian cybercrime groups, targeting corporations around the globe with military precision. The question isn't if they'll strike again, it's when and where. If you want to hear where they strike next, consider subscribing to the channel. If you think hackers like Everest are bad, wait until you see who's coming up next.